I'm Peter from the Daily Rios.
And I'm Eric from Longbox Review. And this is episode 30 of Peter and Eric's Legion Project Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Legion Project Podcast. I am your host, Eric.
And I'm Peter.
And we are here to discuss issue 30 of the third volume of the Legion of Superheroes, Brainy's Lucky Day.
He's going gambling, right? An issue about Ventura.
Based on that cover, obviously, he just lost everything. His life savings. He's going to start drinking very soon.
Aren't we all?
So Peter, how's your week going?
Hey, it's good. We're in the middle of summer. July's a boring month for me. I don't do anything. Theater again. No theater, no school. So it's kind of a boring summer, but that's fine. That's exactly what I want. Exactly what I need.
Yeah.
Just enjoy myself. I get to actually be tan. Last summer, I mean, I was out, but I was a pale mess, so I'm going to get some color this time.
Well, I mean, look at me.
You're not allowed out. You're not allowed out of
I know, right?
Place that's not, we have to childproof your entire house now.
I got to wear a plastic bubble or something when I go outside. I know. Although, my last incident, and this is what Peter's alluding to, that happened indoors. So, it's not just outside.
All right.
But yeah, I gotta, because of the scar that I now have on my forehead, I need to wear a hat, a baseball cap, when I'm outside, because they said the sun really makes it will make the scar more prominent.
Okay.
And so I've been trying to avoid direct sunlight on my newfound scar. So, and if people are interested, find out more. You can go to the Longbox Review feed and listen to my latest The Gutters episode where I talk about my lack of coordination.
I've yet to listen to that. So, listeners, we're recording this before we had released episode 29. So, you're probably going to hear this, I don't know, 3 weeks, 4 weeks after we record it. But yeah, I have to listen to that episode. So maybe you could be like Tharok, like we're going to talk about in this issue, and just sort of,
that, yeah,
lid off your face. Do that for
I think
Halloween.
That would be an improvement in my case.
Well, so far, I've called you Dr. Doom and now Tharok.
That's right.
Terrible. I'm a terrible human being. We have a couple announcements here at the start of the episode. One announcement and one fun thing. Both fun things, I guess. So we are the train is getting closer and closer to the Universo project.
Ooh.
This is episode 30, taking a look at issue 30. We have episode 31 coming next. Then we'll do a Tales episode on Cosmic Boy, which is being released during these issues, but we're going to wait. I know Eric is excited for that. And then we will be probably by September hitting the first issue of the Universo project, which is awesome. So, as we've been doing a few other times, I have a new contest to give away the Universo project, my extra copies of issues number 32, 33, 34, and 35. We're going to run this contest in enough time that you should be able to get the copies to you by the time we probably even record the first one, maybe. So as you're hearing this, we have no idea when this episode is going to be released. I'm assuming, late July probably. So we'll give it to somewhere in the middle of August. We'll give it a couple of weeks for you to do what, the easiest contest in the world. just email either one of us. I want the Universo project, or something like that. Universo is my master. Whatever you want to write in the email. Send me your email. Send us your name. I'll put it all together. I'll compile it, and then somebody will pick a winner, and it'll be that easy. And it really is that easy. I no interest in making you jump through hoops for these issues. So they're good copies. They're not like near mint, but they're good copies. Back issue bin copies. Great Steve Lytle covers. Can't wait to talk about them. You will be getting the 4 issues, the story that this podcast is named after. So if you're someone that likes paper, here's more paper for your collection.
And less in Peter's.
Yeah. I know, right?
You said you already have them, so
they're extra copies, right? I just got one of the issues I think that I was missing from eBay.
Oh, really?
Just like a couple months ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I had I had these already, and then somewhere along the way, just while I was back issue diving, it was like whenever I see a copy of something, I'm like, ooh, I want a second copy of that. Why? I have no idea, because we're collectors, right?
It's a sickness.
It is. And then eventually, as we were doing this podcast and I realized I had these issues, I was like, oh, this would actually make a really good contest. Give these away. You can find these on the DCU app and probably, that's fine. Or maybe you have them in your collection or whatever. But anybody who doesn't have them, or if you want extra copies or whatever, I don't know. I don't need to know your reasons. Just, send me your email. I will send you those. So, and you can send that to either Peter at the Daily Rios or
longboxreview@gmail.com.
Awesome. Secondly, Eric and I were talking about this before we started recording. In my eBay searches, I saw a title of something I hadn't heard of before, Legion of Stupid Heroes, from 1987, from Blackthorn Publishing, a parody issue. I love those mid 80s, late 80s, like Boris the Bear and Nat Rat.
Yeah. I remember that one.
Yeah. There is a Crisis one, something like Crisis of Infant something, or I forget what it's called. I've been looking for that. But this is one that I just randomly came across on eBay. Like I said, hadn't heard of it before. Let's see. Taylor Overbay, Mike Helms, Julian Kearns on inks. Taylor Overbay sounds like almost like a pseudonym. Black and white, pretty damn good copy. And the title logo, Legion of Stupid Heroes, as I showed Eric, is in the same design as this Baxter run. They totally lifted, especially the word Legion. I don't know how they do that.
Yeah,
copyright. But it says satire parody. With Legion members, Nam L, Phantasmic Girl, Camo Lion Boy instead of Chameleon Boy, Cro-Mag Man, Career Girl, Tinder Wolf, that's funny, Dawn Spark, Magnet Head, and then there's other characters like Superman, Plastic Surfer, Maniac 5.
That's probably my favorite.
Boobin instead of Robin, and so on and so forth. It goes on and on and on. So, Legion of Stupid Heroes. And apparently there was also a later volume from like the late 90s from a different publisher that now I'm going to have to try to look to see what that's all about. I love those parody issues.
Yeah. As long as they don't, take too many liberties.
Well, I can't wait to read it.
You have to let me know what it's like.
Yeah, Phantom Girl was awfully bubbly, if you know what I mean, in that issue. That's my girl. Don't mess with my girl.
Right?
Okay. I don't know. You have anything else?
Well, considering the premise of this issue, Brainy's Lucky Day, I wanted to ask you, Peter, have you ever had a lucky day like this? Basically like you're having a great day and all of a sudden, there's a twist ending for you.
Oh boy. Oh, I'm sure, when you go to work and you come home and your girlfriend dumps you, that's always
Oh my God.
interesting.
Wow. I'm sorry. I did not anticipate that going there.
Oh, I'll go dark.
Oh,
No,
geez.
no, I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure everybody does, right? You're
Yeah.
rolling along, and then all of a sudden, you know, an airplane toilet drops on your head. And
Oh
that's it.
God.
How about you?
Well, I had something similar to this actually. Not to make it all bring us down at all, but yeah, I like kind of like you. I had a good day at work. I remember I was actually driving someone home to their home that I worked with, and my then girlfriend, now wife, Kitra, was with me, and she had to give me some bad news, which was my aunt who had an accident, a horse accident. She fell off the horse and hit her head on a rock, so she was in the hospital in a coma. But we were all hopeful and everything. And then my wife, I was having a good day. I was even kind of laughing about something that happened at work. And then after we dropped off, this person, my wife, told me that my aunt had died
Hmm.
earlier that night. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, that's now you mentioned, I do remember going to a birthday party, and on the train to the birthday party, I was getting phone calls.
Oh
You
no.
get a phone call from your mom, whatever, and I couldn't get it because the reception was bad. Then I got another one. Then I got a call from my sister, one of my sisters, and that's when I was like, okay, what's going on?
Yeah.
And my uncle had uh, passed in a bad work accident.
Oh no.
Yeah, immediately I was walking to the park. I was it just hit me like, and I was at this party, and then I was like thinking, okay, I gotta go. I can't stay anymore. So yeah, that is okay. So if you're talking those terms, yeah. Oh, that's interesting. See, that kind of puts the issue in a new light. Uh, Thinking in those terms. I'll explain what I mean, when we get into the conversation. So,
Mm-hmm.
boy, we're going really dark for
I
this
know. Sorry about
midsummer
that.
episodes. Sorry. Hey, let's give some good news real quick. I totally forgot about this. Did you see on Brian Michael Bendis's Twitter about there is more Legion of Superheroes coming? Promise, we're getting it done right. I believe you will be delighted, maybe even a tad blown away.
Okay.
People were talking about Legion, wondering if there was anything going on, and he responded. So that's what he
Well,
responded.
that's good. Good. I did not see that. However, I did. I don't remember who now, but I was scrolling through Twitter as I often do, and came across some retweets from people where other people were having this conversation about the Bendis Sook Legion, and they were complaining about how long it's taking Sook to get the issues out, and this is why we're having this long delay. And they were saying, well, why don't they should just get somebody else to do it so that we get more Legion more consistently and all this stuff. I'm like, well, I guess I don't care about that kind of stuff anymore. Maybe when I was younger, it's like, I care to get, you gotta get that issue every month, right? Now it's just like, just give me a good story. I don't really care how long it takes, and I don't care that we haven't had a Legion book in I'll just say months. I don't remember how long it's been since issue 12 came out.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, if they're working on it, and maybe later this year, perhaps in the fall, that'd be a good time, I would think, to announce a return of the Legion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've been curious if they were going to continue that version of the Legion that we've been getting. And so if Bendis says that it's returning, then we must be, because they're not going to revamp the Legion so quickly, I wouldn't think. And with Bendis on board, he wouldn't just redo his stuff like that. I wouldn't think anyway. So
Yeah.
I'm actually, I don't know. What do you think about this? The return of the, I know you haven't, I forget. Have you read all the issues?
Nope, not yet.
Okay. Okay. But I mean, that says something about your impression of the book, right? You don't feel that urge to go read it. So
yeah, or I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I'm also waiting for if we were ever going to do a podcast on it or whatever. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know what I'm waiting for. I really don't. I mean, I think at this point, any writer and artist that wants to do the Legion, they should just always reboot it from now on. Just even if it only lasts 4 issues, 10 issues, 12, who cares at this point? We have so many versions of them. It's like, go ahead, do what you want. Let me see. One of them will stick. Well, alternate future, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and considering, and part of the reason I was kind of wondering what we would get is because of the whole Infinite Frontier thing, and some of the stuff that I read in those lead up issues to Infinite Frontier. We clearly saw the our Legion from the 70s and 80s, and so all that stuff is valid now apparently, along with the Bendis Sook version.
Wait, where did we see that? Where did we see it?
In the there were two issues leading up to Infinite Frontier. There were 2 specials, and I forget the names of them.
The Generations stuff.
Yes.
And those,
and
they were there.
Superboy was in it, and the version of the Legion in the mid to late 70s, prominently in a couple pages.
Okay.
Involving Superboy and his whole story in those 2 Generations specials.
Interesting. I just think they should, whenever revamps happen, reboots, revamps, that are clearly reboots, but yet there's like a question of, did the original happen?
Yeah.
I'm talking Battlestar Galactica, right? Like there was, you clearly saw the older versions of the Cylons. You clearly saw older versions of the starships that Adama used to pilot. Or think of the V series, right? When they rebooted the V series, even though I hadn't watched it, I know there are elements of the original, like actors from the original who came back. I think when they do that, I think there's something fun about that, and it makes people, I think, accept the new version more. So like when we were speculating about what is this new Legion going to be, and I said, okay, here's what you do. You have the new Legion, but then you somehow go even 1,000 years later than the Legion, or a couple hundred years, and they are the kids, or they are the the descendants, or whatever. Like, I think I even speculated Bendis's Legion. What if the character Element Lad wasn't really Element? He took the name Element Lad, but really he's Sunboy, or he has powers like Sunboy. Like they totally just were like, let's picking names out of the hat. Let's go Silver Age. Just pick names out of the planetary machine. You have fire powers, but we're going to call you Polar Boy. Ha, because we're wacky. We're in the future. And then make something dramatic happen, and then they actually have to become heroes. But they're reminiscing about who they're modeled after. Like that is there's precedent. The very second or third appearance of the Legion of Superheroes, they were saying they were the kids of the original ones that they met.
That's right.
Like explain that. Go back and like make a concept about that. So I think that's why I'm standoffish of that series, is because I don't want to go into it. But he's, wrap it back around. We're getting more Legion apparently. When? Who knows? So, all right, let's talk about the Legion that we do like. That I like.
Ooh.
That I like.
Okay.
Legion of Superheroes, issue 30. Take it away.
All right, Brainy's Lucky Day, as I said before, Paul Levitz, Greg LaRocque, and Mike DiCarlo listed as artists with Arnstar. Again, an inking assist. I really got to look this up. John Costanza letters, Carl Gafford colors, Karen Berger editor, with a cover, a very simple, perhaps even understated cover by Steve Lytle. So what is this issue about? Brainy's Lucky Day turns out to be someone else's worst, was the official copy. Here is my synopsis. Brainiac 5 apologizes to Sensor Girl for his previous behavior, and she readily accepts. She invites Brainiac 5 to join her as she finishes her meal, and they talk, with Sensor Girl making a very strong point. Mon-El and Ultra Boy help fortify the starship that will carry them and Ambassador Relnick into Dominion space, as Universo commands. Some Legionnaires help the science police deal with a malfunctioning Niagara hydro energy system. Brainiac 5 discovers that Corbalian lightning monsters are the cause. On Hycreus, the assembled Legionnaires acclimate to the Great Mother Ocean, and Tellus is reunited with his friend Loros, who tells them that Atmos was there recently. And we discover that Loros is under Universo's command. The guy is everywhere. Lightning Lass manages to herd the lightning monsters out in the open, but this only causes other issues. So Brainiac 5 devises a plan and leaves his force field belt with Lightning Lass to use to keep the animals from hurting anyone. However, when Lightning Lass can't figure out how to use the belt, Dream Girl takes it and puts it to use before Brainy returns, and they short-circuit the monsters into unconsciousness. Elsewhere, Universo tells exactly no one that today is the day that he will rid himself of his one weakness. That night, Brainiac 5 joins Sunboy and Dawnstar at a nightclub. Sunboy and Dawnstar dance together, and Brainiac 5 encounters Dr. Chassir, and completely out of character offers her his company. At Legion HQ, Polar Boy nervously asks Element Lad if it would be okay if he ran against the Legion leader in the next election, to which Element Lad responds with a resounding, huh? The following morning, Brainiac 5 sees Lightning Lass and Shrinking Violet as they are leaving for a few days away. Brainiac 5 enters the HQ, and Computer delivers a fateful message from Dr. Fashir at the Metacenter. Ron Vidar has died. Sorry about that. I for some reason, I think it was autocorrect. I had Dr. Chase instead of Dr. Chase. That's why I paused and looked at you, Peter.
First of all, who knew she was coming back? I didn't know that.
Right? It was nice to see her.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we can't talk about covers anymore. I mean, we can talk about this cover, but we can't do cover comparison.
I know. I'm going to miss that. So I have quite enjoyed this part of our conversation.
Yeah, our episodes are going to be much shorter, I guess. We'll see. I'm sure we'll find other things to talk about. He gets 2 covers, right? Like after Legion 16, now he has the spot. That was and they're both tragic. What is it about Brainy? You're a much more invested Legion reader and like the older material than I am. What is it about Brainy that seems to spark this need to beat on him?
I know, right?
Yeah.
I think it's very well, okay, so when I first started reading the Legion, and I was reading Brainiac 5, the very scientific, logical brain one, they even went so far as to make him sound like Mr. Spock in his mannerisms, in the way he speaks and that kind of stuff. He's the really smart guy in the room. And he often was portrayed as somewhat emotionless because he has a computer brain, and so therefore he must be like a Vulcan, I guess. I'm not sure what they were thinking, but that's how they kind of portrayed Brainiac 5 based on my reading. And I will admit it's probably not as extensive as some of our listeners, but that's my experience with him. And they did write those few stories where Brainy went crazy. I think it's I think they look at him as that there's so much pressure on him to be the smartest guy and solve all the problems. And instead of going, I don't know, I was trying to think of a good analogy elsewhere in superhero comics. Reed Richards and those genius level guys. Maybe Ant-Man. I'm forgetting Hank Pym. Yeah. Just they crack under the pressure and go a little crazy and invent things, like murderous robots, which, actually that's a good analogy because they both do that. Brainy did it first, much earlier than Hank Pym though. Yeah. Anyway, so I think that's part of it. It's kind of like, here's this, like I said, somewhat emotionless character, depending on which writer is actually portraying him, and they like to throw things at him and see what cracks him open, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Plus,
and a lot. Sorry, a lot of what you just said is on display here too, right? He is. Mm-hmm. He does. There are times where he comes across as cold or inexperienced with emotions, and he does figure out the day. You know what I mean? He figures out a problem. So everything you said is kind of encapsulated by exactly what we just read.
And Brainy being Brainy, he is a bit aloof, because everybody else is dumber than him. Not that I don't know. It never comes across to me like he thinks he's better than everybody, but he is smarter than everybody. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, I don't think that we see Brainy having a lot of friends, even though he's with the Legion and they're his comrades, and they depend upon each other. We don't really see him hanging out like, say, Mon-El and Ultra Boy do, or Lightning Lass and Shrinking Violet, right? We don't see those kinds of connections with the other Legionnaires. There is an exception, of course, with Ron Vidar, who is an honorary Legionnaire, but because of their scientific interests, they have a commonality there, and over time, although I think most of that has been off panel, so to speak, because it's talked about, but we haven't really seen it on the page. But they have developed this friendship, and so when Brainy gets that unfortunate news, it affects him very greatly. And this is the second time in so many issues. I think the last time we saw Brainy crying was the Crisis crossover, or was that technically a Crisis crossover issue when
it wasn't branded as such, but
right, okay,
was, yeah.
With the whole Supergirl thing, when the tears are just coming flowing freely down his face, and here at the end, we get that final image with him tearing up over that news. So
yeah.
I thought that was they did quite a good job at conveying that whole idea, like I said, of you're having a great day, things are going well, and then wham, you get the rug pulled out from under you. So I quite enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I think it was because of either residual memory or just, conversations or whatever. I quickly kind of knew what was going to happen by that last page. And I don't know if you knew what was going to happen, but, and I wondered, if I hadn't read this issue before, which I don't have memory of reading it, but I knew what the ending was going to be, would it have hit a little harder? Mm-hmm. I think now, first of all, our dark conversation at the top of the episode about our own personal bad days, but then also what you said about camaraderie, friendship. There is so much camaraderie going on and love and romance going on around Brainiac 5. Okay, this exactly what you just talked about, that he doesn't have a lot of friends, blah, 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 has made me like this issue even more. Out of the two previous issues, Starboy, Starfinger, and now Brainy, this is probably now close to my favorite of the three, although I do like the Starboy issue, because he is swimming in the middle of Timberwolf and Colossal Boy arguing about Moop's ball, and Shrinking Violet and Lightning Lass making plans to go do something as friends, whatever their burgeoning friendship is, whatever that is going to be. Mon-El and Ultra Boy departing. Oh, but here comes Shadowlass and Phantom Girl to give them a send off and kiss their boyfriends goodbye. Like, or going out with Sunboy and Dawnstar and like going, why am I here? But then seeing Dawnstar kind of, like he's immersed in all of that. I almost could see it as like, if you compare what happens at the beginning of the issue where he's talking to Censor Girl, residual feelings of all that who is Censor Girl stuff, right? Believing it was Supergirl, and all this other stuff. And then and then the ending where he's like coming home before he hears the news. It's almost like we would have gotten a new Brainiac 5 after this. And then he's hit with the news of Ron Vidar. And it's like, it's almost like I wonder, again, we've been talking about it these past two issues. Will Paul Levitz pick up on this again? Who the F knows? But I sort of could see it, like I like those comics that make you think about what you would do with the characters or whatever. Like I could see him reverting again, going back to his, his lab and going, this is why I don't go out in the world. This is why I don't make friends.
Yeah. And maybe even going even further within himself than we've ever seen him go before. Yeah. Just to retreat into that shell, which just proves, just like in Star Trek, Vulcans, it isn't that Vulcans don't have emotions, it's that they suppress them so much, right? And that's always an interesting dynamic with the actors who portray those characters when they don't understand that, and we end up getting these really flat portrayals of Vulcans, right? Same thing with Brainiac 5. If you don't, he is a very emotive character. He just doesn't. He's not as emotive as say, I don't know, Dream Girl or something. So that would have been a really interesting, or maybe we will see. I kind of think we don't, because we're going to go. The next issue is a what do they call that?
Flashback.
A flashback issue. Yeah. And then we get into the Universal Project. So then we got this next crisis that everybody has to react to and solve. So, maybe he's not going to be allowed to have that time to, well, one, grieve, and then two, deal with the aftermath of that.
Yeah. I mean, look, we tend to say that Levitz probably won't pick up on this. And then every now and then I'm surprised. In this issue, I'm surprised by two things that he picks up on, threads that I thought were not going to get touched on again. And I was like, oh, okay. And then there were two other plot points that I didn't realize we were going to get on the page. So who knows? Maybe he'll surprise us down the road. But this issue made me, if we're talking generally, made me appreciate Paul Levitz's use of these single issues, because even though these past three issues have been singular in story, there is a buildup. There was a point in this issue, like around the last fourth of it, that I was like, or third of it, I was like, is he biding his time a little too long? But probably not. I mean, really, it's only going to be 4 issues until, between the end of the Sensor Girl mystery to Universal Project. It's only 4 issues, right? So, okay, that's fine. That's actually not, that's not a lot. Mm-hmm. So I wrote that note down, and it has to do with a scene with Element Lad that we'll talk about. But there's some consistency with these 3 issues, and I've read a few reviews where, people don't like these issues, and I'm like, I'm good with them. I see what he's doing. Yeah. And I think everything you just talked about with Brainy, which I'm glad you went through, makes me like this issue more. So, you have any other general thoughts about this issue? Sounds like you really liked.
Yeah, I just to touch on what you just said. It's these issues are about character and showing us the relationships. And I've talked about this before in previous episodes where, that's the kind of stuff that I really respond to. The cool plots of, Darkseid coming back to the 31st century, or upcoming is the Universal Project. This adventure that they have to go through, or some antagonists they have to defeat. That those are fun, but this is the kind of stuff that really makes the Legion to me. So I don't understand the criticism of these kinds of issues. So
yeah, like my perception of why the Legion became popular for anybody who was really like reading the Legion as it was coming out, like even if you want to say like 60s, 70s Legion, was that they liked the Legion because of all of the potential, right? One little bit of dialogue and they're like, oh, Timberwolf is this, one other little bit of dialogue and they're like, yes, Saturn Girl is the Iron Butterfly, or whatever they call it, one time. But really, all those stories are high adventure, right? Like especially
Yeah,
Silver Age,
yeah.
right? They're very high. It's all adventure, and people picking at each other, and just and them saying, "Well, I come from the planet this, and we're grr," whatever. And then you get like the '70s stuff where okay, a lot of that romance and
Mm-hmm.
partners, and it makes me wonder all this characterization stuff. I feel like my perception is it was mostly off panel or in tiny dialogue until you get to the writers who really show it on the page. And I think that's later Legion, right? Like, isn't that
Mm-hmm.
like 70s, and especially what we're doing now?
Yeah,
Like you said,
yeah.
this is a character issue, or like the Starboy issue, which I know there are some people who, I read a review that they didn't like that issue. They thought it kicked off, several issues where it was just more. I don't know what they were looking for. I don't know. I dug it.
Mm-hmm.
Dug this issue, especially now talking with you, and I'm finding more things in it that I really liked. So, um,
Well, and we have, if I'm remembering correctly, because there have been other issues like this throughout this now 30 issue run, where we have these interstitial stories that are pauses, or a slow down, and a stop and slow down kind of issue, a breathing issue, between the adventurous ones. And as I recall, we typically tend to really respond well to those.
oh yeah,
So this
yeah,
is no different.
yeah. I did write about the cover. Um, I guess we should have known where it was all going to end, as you alluded to earlier. Brainy's Lucky Day. Oh, it's a good cover. It's a good cover. It would grab you, I think, on the newsstand.
Yeah, I kind of wish, because it's a very simple black cover, which we typically don't get a lot of all black background covers, um, and just him sitting there, right, with his face in his hands. But then they kind of ruin it for me with this big white blocky text that says Brainy's Lucky Day on it. I guess just to heighten the mood, I guess, or the contrast of him in this pose in this dire moment, and then we get this, I don't know, not jovial. I know it just the the title and how big it is on the cover just kind of undercuts to me, and actually kind of overpowers the moment that we're seeing here, Brainiac 5 experience. So that's the only criticism I'll lay against this cover.
It's got to stand out on the racks.
That's
Right?
true. I get that. I understand why they would have that big white blocky text on that black background, because it would stand out like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, still, it's just like. Plus, I also like notice the Legion of Superheroes title logo is colored this, I think the same color or very similar to the color of Brainiac 5's outfit. So I thought that was a nice touch.
I mean, at the same week that Legion of Superheroes 30 was coming out, if these resources are to be believed, Elvira House of Mystery number 11 was also on the stands with her, voluptuous body and riding a broom. So it's like, when you're a little kid, when you go, oh, boobs, it's like, oh no, Brainy's Lucky Day, yeah. Also, Superman 1 was coming out at the same time. So, they got to fight. It's got to fight. You got to fight for your place on the rack. Uh, did the ending surprise you? Did you know it was coming? What was your reaction to the ending?
It well, I already knew it because when I came into the Legion later, and I realized after our last episode recording that I think I said issue 38, and that's it was actually earlier than that. I can't remember which issue in number it was, but anyway, basically the whole Superboy, resolving the whole Superboy thing. That's when I came back to the Legion. Um, at some point along that way, I think there was mention of Ron being dead. And then, 30 some issues later, when this volume ends and the 5 year later run begins, there's a reveal there involving Ron Vidar. So I knew something had happened, but obviously, there he is. So
Yeah,
it
yeah.
It was, unfortunately, I feel like because of that spoiler aspect to it, the impact of the end of this issue was lessened.
Okay, yeah. Can I ask a question about the ending? I'm gonna go a little cheap right now, if you don't mind. Get some humor into this episode. No. Brainy's lucky day. He's doing the walk of shame back to the Legion of Superheroes HQ.
I was going to ask you.
Did Brainy have a lucky night?
It sure seems to suggest that, doesn't it?
Yeah, right? He meets up with Dr. Chasier again at that club, and she's got him, linked in the arms when he's going to go take a stroll back to the HQ, but he doesn't make it until the next morning.
Well, how late was he out with Sunboy and Dawnstar, I guess is the question. Maybe it was really late, and he walked Dr. Chasier back to I don't know where, and he's just on his way back into his apartment. I don't know. But yeah, I wondered the same thing. It's like, are they really suggesting that they got together?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the time shift between the club scene, then they cut to the Legion headquarters. It does look like it's still night.
Well, he does say you're out with the dawn today. So this is the next morning. That's why I said, how late was this? But if that's the case, well, no, yeah, because the previous scene with Element Land and Polar Boy, that seems to indicate that it was still the same night.
Right.
And then we get the next morning.
Right. But then, dawn, maybe it was only a couple hours.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, you might be right. I don't know.
Okay, well, let me ask you this.
He looks awfully smiley.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say he is smiling. He's happy. This is a Brainiac 5 that we rarely get to see. So I don't know. I don't. So in your head canon, did they?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I like to think so too.
If not, they got some good snuggling or something.
Because I mean, he had such a chaste relationship with Supergirl, and there hasn't been anybody else, as far as I know.
Yeah. And she seemed to like him in that issue 16. So, the Doctor. So, yeah, I mean, if anything, if you want to go with the theme of the issue, potential, right? Things that, if he's letting the Sensor Girl stuff go, if he's letting the idea that the people around, they never really know they just call him intelligent, and then when he corrects like his teammates about what his intelligence really is, he saves the day. He's like, you know what, I can start a new course, and maybe he sees Dr. Chasier as like, I can start new, right? This is a very sweet coda, or whatever you want to call it, to issue 16 in that regard, where he makes amends with Sensor Girl, with Jackie, and he might see a potential relationship, even though it's not on the page. I think it's heavily implied, and then wham bam, Monday hits him in the face. So, in my headcanon, they did do something. I don't know what they did. What's whatever the 30th equivalent of second base is. Maybe that's what they did.
No, I'm saying they went all the way.
Okay. All right. It's hard. I don't know how to talk about this issue, oddly enough. What points do you have?
I know we've kind of talked around everything. Well, you just mentioned Sensor Girl, and that opens the issue. So I did want to talk about that scene for a couple of reasons. I'll just mention as a continuation of my points from last episode about Dream Girl. On the very first page, notice her sitting there in between Brainiac 5 and Sensor Girl. She's in the background, but she is in between them. But notice how she's sitting there alone, closed off to a degree. So I think we're seeing some great continuation of characterization throughout these issues. So I just want to point that. Plus, we also get Shrinking Violet and Lightning Lass. They're in the opening scene. They're in the final scene. So that's a nice way to bookend the issue, even though they don't really have a whole lot of importance to the story itself. So just artistically, I think that's a nice touch.
I think it's the closest LaRocca's come to really paying attention to every aspect of the visual medium. You know? Yeah.
Like I said last episode, to me he's really starting to fire on all cylinders. There's a lot of some other things in here that I may point out too, but just some wonderful storytelling qualities. Despite the fact that there's too many panels here, my one criticism of his work, too many panels where the backgrounds are just splashes of color instead of actual stuff. So, but anyway. But I really wanted to talk about with you is that the conversation between Sensor Girl and Brainiac 5, the apology that we've talked about, her reaction really to this whole thing. God, I loved it.
Showing their friendship, showing that these are characters that have known each other for a very, very, very long time. That in my mind, which may be wrong, the only really thing that connects them is that they're Legionnaires.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I thought Levitz was he just really was nailing everything. The conversation, the personality. These were the two things I talked about that I'm glad that there was some more page time given to. First of all, a mention of Karate Kid. Thank you. Yes. Okay. I feel like the death of Karate Kid lives over a lot of this volume for me, because I keep wanting them to, say that they lost this member, and have a reaction to it. And we get it every now and then. But then again, it's another little beat of the Who is Sensor Girl stuff, because I think, as you mentioned way, way, way back, that you wanted to see what Brainiac 5's reaction was going to be. And now we kind of get it to a degree. But also that he had to come to Jackie because he really in his heart wanted it to be Supergirl, but it's not Supergirl. So does that make him disappointed? But it's his friend, Mm-hmm. So yeah, I really dug this opening sequence.
Well, and it also goes to show that he's not this pompous guy that who hides his own mistakes, right? Or doesn't own up to his own mistakes. He comes forward. He cares enough. This is how I'm interpreting it. He cares enough about Jackie that he's going to initiate this. He's gotten to the point. It's taken him long enough, to get here. But he finally comes and offers an actual apology to her face, and she's so accepting of it. I think she talks about it here. You didn't think I'd accept so easily? Quite frankly, no. She says, after what happened to Val, there's your Karate Kid reference. Let's say I acquired a sense of proportion. Friends, she says. I thought this was interesting, how she put this. You're of old and noble lineage on Kalu, Brainiac. One lapse of taste doesn't banish that. And that's doing a couple things, right? That's her explaining how she sees the situation, that what did she say, the sense of proportion, right? It's like, yeah, I can understand why you did what you did, even though it was a violation of my privacy. And that's
referring to that he invaded her personal quarters.
Mm-hmm.
He was always constantly needling for information.
Yeah. But it also, again, with character, really puts to the forefront, how Jackie sees things. She is from a monarchy. She was queen of her planet. So she sees things in that kind of a royal or regal perspective. So she would relate to Brainiac in that way, in the way, the word she said, old and noble lineage, the fact that he is a descendant of, although I don't know, not all kings and queens are great, right? So, but they're still part of the lineage. So descendant of the original Brainiac, so to speak. So I really like how Levitz is touching on a few different things with this scene. But then a couple of things. She tells him to smile. That to me also says she cares about this guy. It's like, don't worry about it. You wronged me, but I'm okay with it, and I want you to be okay. So let's move on. So that says a lot about her. However, she does hold his hand, comforting him, also comforting him. But then, a very subtle, or maybe not so subtle, but she subtle through words, but not action. Still, once is ample for a lifetime, right? And she very, as this is my allusion to the strong point. She's, squeezing his hand really, really tightly, that we even see the sound effect crack. Very much you better not do that again, buddy. I just loved it.
I have to be honest. I was a little confused by this. I thought she was saying, I have seen your troubles and your pain. It would be crude of me not to have forgiven you. Still, once is ample for a lifetime. I thought she meant, I only need you to forgive you once. Like you don't have to, but now I realize that is what she's saying. She goes, you only get one. You only get one hit.
Yeah.
I missed the crack thing. Okay. God, I'm such a bad reader. Why? I don't know how I missed that.
I've just seen so many movies where kings or queens, or people in a position of power like that, in the way that they deal with their underlings, they can be very forgiving of slights to them from these other people, right? Or very not forgiving and off with her head type situations, right? And so that's kind of where I'm coming at in this scene. It's like, or coming from in this scene, it's like she is that monarch still, even though she's a queen without a kingdom at the moment. That is still Jackie to a T.
I think that what you mentioned about Jackie's station and her position, like, okay, she's drinking from a chalice, right? Like, I don't know, is that standard Legion utensil ware, But also I thought it's an interesting choice artistically, although I understand it, to show her in Censor Girl's costume, but her face is prominent. There's no mask. Maybe there's no need for a mask anymore, but she talked so much about the choice of being Censor Girl, using this, creating that identity and what it meant to her. And I don't know if it feels like a contradiction to being in the costume, but yet we see her face, or it's just strengthening her beliefs that, okay, yes, I am Jackie, I am the former Princess Projector, but I really am Censor Girl. That's why I wear the costume. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about that? Does that strike anything for you?
No, that's a good point. Although I think if they had shown her with the Censor Girl mask, this scene would have played very differently. Because we got this really intimate moment between two fellow teammates who have known each other for a long time, but there was this indiscretion on B5's part. And if Jackie was wearing the mask, well, first of all, she wouldn't. Well, I guess she could, because it's all illusion, right? The mask isn't real, right? That's not.
Who knows?
We don't know, right? That hasn't been really firmly established what this is.
I mean, if you think about when she was revealed, Emerald Empress stripped away everything. She was in her Queen Projector costume.
Yeah.
So the whole thing was an illusion.
So interesting that anyway, getting into the minutia of Jackie's powers. But yeah, I mean, she could have been drinking, I guess, even though with the math, that would have been an interesting visual. But I like that they did it this way, because we get to see both their faces and their facial reactions. Albeit there, really aren't that many, but you get that face-to-face, eye-to-eye interaction. And I don't know that would have played as intimately if she
Sure.
were wearing the Sensor Girl mask.
Anything unknown drives me mad. Scientifically, personally, it's rather terrible sometimes. That's an
What a
understatement.
right. Yeah, Computo. What was the other?
Omega.
Omega. Computo again.
The list goes on.
Oh, the poor guy.
Yeah.
There was something I read. Continuing. Sorry, I think I'm about done with this scene. But there was a letter writer in a later issue suggesting that something could develop between Jackie and Brainiac 5 based on this scene. Peter's face is like, meh.
I mean,
So I was curious what you thought about that.
I wouldn't want it to be that way, right? Not every interaction has to end with a romantic tingle, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what you mentioned about her cracking his knuckles, cracking his fingers, you know, which I missed, that's not, she don't have that in her head.
Well, that's not the equivalent 31st century equivalent of dipping a girl's pigtails in ink.
No. I hope not.
And can I say, how many of our potential younger listeners out there do they understand that reference?
Right.
That's a pretty old. Sorry.
Or even just, why would he? I mean, especially in the issue where Dr. Chaseer shows up, I think it almost would be gross if he was going to have feelings for her. Now, if he had feelings because he's immature when it comes to that kind of stuff, okay. But he thought it was Supergirl. You know, he clearly would be projecting, no pun intended, his own feelings of what he thought Sensor Girl was going to be onto who it actually is, and that's opening up a whole dangerous can of worms.
And see, given that, I agree with you. Given that, had this scene been drawn with her, with the mask, with the blonde hair, that would have, not doing that really goes to your point, and so it really undercuts that idea to me that he's harboring some feelings for her. Yeah, I don't buy that at all.
This might be jumping out of the conversation a little bit, but the other plot echoes from previous issues that I was kind of nicely surprised at was that we saw Wildfire, Quizlet, White Witch, Tellus on Tellus's homeworld of Hycraeus, and then we also saw what's going on with Mon-El, Ultra Boy, and Block, and Ambassador Relnick heading off into the deep quadrant of the Dominator's world. Clearly, if in previous issues I wouldn't call those scenes subtle, but clearly on the page here, out and out in the open, everything to do with Universo Project, to the point where we actually get a scene with Universo, which was a nice surprise. And even though these are echoes and beats that we've seen before, I did kind of want more. I was like, I would love to see one or two more. Where else in the universe does he have his fingers, But it was a nice reveal that, yes, we were right. Going to Hycraeus, even though it has some tenuous connection with Atmos and a missing science police officer, one of Tellus's race is also under the sway of Universo. So that slow build is getting a little annoying because it's like... But again, I guess if I was reading it in real time, that would have been exciting. This is exciting. These are interesting buildups. What are your thoughts on that part of this issue?
Well, I don't disagree with you in terms of the buildup, and like you said, if you were reading this back then, month to month, I don't know that maybe I would have been. Well, let's get on with it because it's so prominent in here, and quite honestly, I was surprised that the whole Niagara Hydra energy thing with the lightning monsters wasn't more, because I'm assuming it was having something to do with Universo, but I don't know that we didn't. I don't think we got an explicit acknowledgement of that. and maybe that's because we got such explicit acknowledgments of the other two in the other two scenes. Well, three scenes really with Universo himself. Yeah. So maybe that was just too much. I don't know. Or maybe was that some unrelated thing? It's hard to say, but it seemed like an incongruity in the issue that I wasn't quite sure how to interpret, I guess.
Yeah, because he's watching the scene as when he's masquerading as the vice president. He's watching what's going on at Niagara. That randomly the beasts that empowered the Rands family showing up on Earth in Metropolis. Why? The bit my question is why? There's never there isn't an explanation of what's his purpose other than maybe to keep Brainiac 5 or the remaining Legionnaires busy so he can do what he's going to do with Ron Vidar.
Mm-hmm.
So but that seems so like, I don't know. Is that enough? Is that I'm not sure. There was no explanation given. Part of it felt like it was just to give Brainiac 5 to show why he is a good deputy leader, or I don't know if he even is a deputy leader, or if he's just a leader in general. He can outthink everything. Although I thought he struggled a little too hard to come up with a solution in this scenario.
The short circuit.
Yeah, I was like, really? Does it take you that long to figure out that you should ground? I don't know, or maybe it was, I don't know, that whatever. I think Levitz was, I don't know what he was trying to come up with, but.
Oh, hold on here. I'm okay. Looking at the scene. So he discovers the monsters. I mean, really, there's not a lot of time there. He discovers the monsters. Because he has Lightning Lass heard them out, which is what shocks Timberwolf. And then he says, let me think. Yeah. Yes. Okay. He should have had that at that point. Yeah. I mean, come on. I was reading this out of sequence. So.
Okay.
Yep. I was trying to defend my boy and no, you're right.
There's a point there that I think Levitz didn't hit strong enough,
Yeah. Yeah.
The connection is there. You have to read into it that this is obviously Universal's ploy, but why? But, yeah. If it is just mere distraction, okay. Because Levitz, the whole reveal at the end, Levitz, I feel like, is trying to do it in a, I don't know, soap opera way or whatever. Like you think this is a random issue, just nice, polite, calm issue until we get to that last page. So we don't even see, Levitz makes reference to it in the letter column for this issue where he says, I can't believe you killed off Ron Vidar. He goes, yeah, things happen. You didn't see a body though.
Right? Yeah, I noticed that too.
Even in the letter column, he's like, okay. So the one thing I did get out of the Niagara scene is Dream Girl, our girl Dream Girl, who's just making a name for herself throughout. In fact, I think most of the not to be binary, but the female characters are way more fleshed out, way more interesting in this volume than the men.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas we get a story with Brainy, we get a story with Mon-El, that seems to work. But the arc, the journey, and I'm going to have thoughts about Element Lad in a little bit. The arc and the journey, the men don't have journey. They have some, but they don't. Polar Boy is currently in one right now. I think he's in a very interesting journey. If you go back,
maybe Magnetic Kid.
Yeah, but they're not as deep. They're not as character changing as the women. Right. And here comes Dream Girl, and she's like, "You mean to tell me all this time you never looked at Brainiac 5 punching the buttons?" Like, she's like, "Give me that thing." And she shows, number one, why she's Dream Girl. Number two, why she's smart.
Yeah,
like that's something I learned from this volume and from the Who's Who, was that she is very smart. And she has one small scene, and it's like, yeah, great. He loves this character. She is so good in that scene. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That scene, when, and this goes to my earlier point about LaRoque's draftsmanship. that scene where Lightning Lass is saying, "How do you use this thing?" And Dream Girl's like, "Oh stars, give me that belt! All these years, like you said." And she grabs the belt. The look on Lightning Lass's face as she's looking at Dream Girl, I just dug that. That's the third panel on page 15.
Mm-hmm.
Just like really. So she, Lightning Lass is a bit annoyed, but then yes, then we get to see that wonderful scene with Dream Girl showing her prowess, her scientific prowess, her observational skills, her leadership. There's so much to this character. We talked about a lot of that last episode as well. There was something in the letter column in issue 35 about this issue, about how if Dream Girl can use the force field belt, then why is it even special? Why doesn't Brainiac 5 make force field belts for everybody to protect them? And therefore kind of lose his singularity, his specialness, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. But Paul, in his inimitable way, kind of explains it away, suggesting that Brainiac 5 might need to use his 12th level intelligence brain to use the belt properly. Dream Girl can use it in a pinch for a very limited reason or way, but it really takes Brainiac tweaking the controls to use it properly. So I don't know if I buy that, but it was a nice idea.
Right. Jumping around again. So the Universo scene, he says one step left and then the last act begins. And there's a point about this that I'm going to bring up when we talk about Legends too. If you go back and try to follow those steps and follow those phases or the acts, I guess the first one was putting himself into this position of power. The second one was what? First injuring Ron Vidar, trying to take him off the map a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess it also was an attempted assassination, if you could say.
And at the same time, and maybe even slightly before that, gaining control of all these individuals, his chess pieces on the map.
Right, you're right.
On the board.
You're right. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's true. And then the divide and conquer that we've been talking about these past 3 issues too.
Mm-hmm.
And then whatever this last act is. Yeah.
Well, I took the last act isn't. I mean, that's the next those 4 issues, the Universal Project, right?
Right. Yeah.
But is this a 4-act or a 5-act situation?
Is he in a normal American play or is he in a Shakespeare play?
Yeah, right.
How many acts is he actually, or Greek tragedy that goes on forever? Yeah, I guess the last act is what we get at the last page. He wipes out the one person who is immune to his powers,
mm-hmm.
and all of these dominoes won't come into play until we actually read it, because I don't remember how much is in that flashback issue, if at all. So.
Yeah, I'm very curious. Speaking of that, how much more we get of his reasons, his Universo's struggle with apparently killing his own son. Because
was it a struggle? At least not here.
Well, that's exactly because there have been previous stories where Ron has foiled his machinations. And I think there's at least one where he tried to kill Ron before and he couldn't because it's his son. Right. So what changed between that and now? He just had enough. He's finally deciding that I don't need a son.
What does he say? He says, "Today's the day I rid myself of my one weakness, my own human frailty at last."
That's true.
My own human frailty. Yeah. Oh no, my one human frailty. Do you want to talk about Tellus's homeworld? Did you like that little trip to Icraeus, and we get to actually see a little bit more of this random city and
there were again, this going back to LaRoque and how he's depicting some things. Wildfire is constantly complaining and basically scraping off whatever the great Mother Ocean is kind of this goop. I think he refers to as something like that. Gunk, he says, actually. Lucky thing, this gunk is sticking to my containment suit and blocking my vision. And he's constantly trying to wipe it off or anti-energy it off. And so we get to see that, but his I don't know, exhaust or something, that vent that's on the top of his head. We see that a little bit. We see Quizlet's exhaust from his machine, the way it's drawn. And I really dug the way that that LaRoque is portraying the liquid on Hycreus. It's not just water. It seems to be thicker than water, and I really enjoyed that. Plus, we get to see another alien world that we get to see on that page 12, that almost basically a splash page showing that part of the city, and that giant statue of the Jill Dishpan. It's like, ooh, these guys are conquerors, right? Even though that's not it's kind of not how Tellus portrayed them in the previous issue when he was describing
right
the interaction between the two races. So
is it any wonder his people go the journey that they go? They seem easily duped, or at least innocent, naive enough that they'll believe whatever.
Which is interesting because they seem to be a race of telepaths. That's how they communicate. Or maybe because of that, they are more prone to being, I don't know, what's the word? Just kind of susceptible to suggestion. Oh, there you go. That's to bring it back to Universo.
Yeah. So I liked a couple things here, that their homeworld is clearly within the sphere of influence of the Jill Dishpan, but then, that the United Planets is also part of them too. Like, I love that world building stuff. That's amazing. He meets a friend named Loris. You could almost see that Lytle's original plan for the characters about the gem on the forehead and the little nodules on the back, like if they would just color them differently based on their emotionality, you could see that playing out here. I think it would have been really interesting. But that the character doesn't call Tellus by his real name. He uses Tellus. He uses his superhero name. And
well, and considering what we'll talk about it later from the Who's Who issue, I was blown away by the revelation of his real name in that Who's Who issue. I'm like, because like you said, his friend calls him by Tellus. What do we ever get an explanation for this?
I thought we got his name earlier somewhere along the way, like in one of those. Was it in like issue 17 where they did the different profiles? Didn't they list their name? I don't know. I thought somewhere along the way we saw his real.
Maybe I've just forgotten that, but
I could be wrong. But to play on Wildfire's characterization, which by the way I thought he came off as a great big jerk in this scene, just in these scenes, just a complete jerk.
How is that uncharacteristic of Wildfire, though?
Because I thought it was worse this time.
Oh yeah,
shut up. Yeah. We get it. We get what's going on.
He is such a one. He's such a baby, and two, very intolerant of this species. I don't know,
because they go the two friends go and meet each other. They almost look like they're in an embrace. Part of me thinks that, did they kiss? Did they do, because he goes, "Eesh, I'm glad I can't see or else I might be sick." Like,
oh yeah.
What was that? Like, that whole species thing again, but I thought that was even more, I thought that was much harsher than it's been.
Is he's I'm really stretching this, but he almost comes across as a bit xenophobic.
Oh, yeah. For a guy in a suit that has no human body,
Right.
he's the last one.
but
Yeah,
but I
that
mean,
was terrible.
but he it's hard to really fully accept that characterization, because he's in the Legion. He interacts with all these different species. He often is a mentor to new Legionnaires, although
Yeah,
to be fair, most of the Legionnaires are humanoid, so maybe there is something to that.
he's a gatekeeper.
Yeah. Oh boy. This is something that I'm sure Levitz will not. That is a path that he will not go down with this character.
No, no. But it has been evident. So, and then in the second scene is where we see a member of Tellus's race. Everything is prepared thanks to my master Universo.
Yeah, but what does that mean exactly? I'd be interested to find out how all these different groups, the separated groups, how is that, those situations that they're in, the stuff on Hycreus, the Dominion stuff. I'm probably forgetting some other things. How are those things going to keep those players off the board, or is that even Universal's purpose at the down the road? Is it something else besides keeping them away from Earth?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it is. Like when you go to that Element Lad scene on page 25, which I wrote in my notes here. So Element Lad is at his monitor, doing the whole mission monitor duty thing, giving us the most obvious exposition
Right?
that Levitz has ever given us, I think, to
Yeah.
this point. I was really surprised by that.
Or is that just to demonstrate that Element Lad is a good leader and that he sees patterns emerging or has seen a pattern emerging?
Well, I mean, that's the story aspect of it, right? Like he's figuring it out for himself. I think a little late, but he is figuring it out for himself. But on the comic book terms, I was like, boy, you might as well just slap a Claremont narration box right here and just say, here's everything that has gone on.
Yeah.
So in a writing aspect, and that was the point where I was like, are we biding our time with this story? But anyway, to your point about him as a leader, I think it shows. I don't think he comes across. Okay, first of all he does is sit at the damn board. Every time we see him, he is at the mission monitor board. Okay, I get it. He's the leader, but he's not taking any sort of hands-on approach, right? So he's a leader that's not. I'm sure there's been other leaders that have been like front and center, telling Captain Riker, "I'm going down to the planet," and just going, right, Commander Riker. So he's not. He's sitting around a lot of every scene we see him in. He's sitting in a chair, and then Dream Girl rubs up against him, and then now he's sitting in a chair, and here comes Polar Boy. You know what I mean? So
he's very reactive.
Yeah, and I think that Levitz. So I have two questions about this. Like, first of all, is he a good leader anymore? Has Levitz sort of given up on him? Secondly, we get this scene with Polar Boy. Everything that you've been asking about Polar Boy, about like, why is he taking an interest in some of the novice members of the Legionnaires, and why is he, being super headstrong? And well, here we go. Have we had? Did they announce an election in the letter pages of one of the issues that we've read? They must have. Like that must.
Yeah, we must have missed that because we're supposed to get the result of that very soon, and yet this is the first, I think, in story reference we have to an upcoming election.
Is Levitz gaming the system?
Oh yeah,
he clearly is, right?
Yeah,
or is he seeing how the votes are going or something? I was like, wow.
No, I can't. Except for maybe this issue, I can't see. Because given how long it takes to create these over time, and the timing for, well, I don't know. I guess it depends on how long ago they announced it and are getting their letters from the readers. But I would think not, but who knows?
Okay, I have here next Legion election is announced issue 24.
Oh wow.
So they did in the letter column in issue 24 they announced that a new election. So okay, yeah. So they're not done with it yet, but they might, maybe Levitt's is seeing the way the winds are going, and it is 6 issues later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, if that's the case, then I can totally see the setup here.
What'd you make of the whole polar boy?
It's just he's such an interesting character, because we have, like you mentioned, we have seen him, just barrel into the Legion application and just say, I'm a Legion member now. Get used to it. and then the mentoring, the fact that Levitz has been focusing on him and keeping him front and center, and he's not the goofball that Giffen often portrays him as, at least in that Legion of Substitute Heroes special, and others. But that on the other hand, he is giving his leader, his current leader, respect and props, right? It's like, would it be okay if I ran against you? It's very, I don't know. It's very nice of him to do what he did. Polar Boy's a nice guy.
I don't know. I think he's sniffing. He's sniffing the way. He's sniffing.
Oh, you
think
there's something more sinister here, under the surface?
Maybe not sinister.
So you don't take him at face value that he's genuinely concerned about upsetting Element Lad by running against him.
I don't know. It seems like he's like one of those overzealous, high schoolers that has to, not quite a teacher's pet, but yet has to be up front and wants to volunteer and is like not quite, it's not like those pageant movies where, pageant moms will do anything for their daughter and, kill people or whatever, like those comedies and stuff like that. But he's close. He's like, yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, that all, what did he say? I couldn't help hearing you worry, but it didn't sound too serious to me. Then again, I guess that kind of concern goes with being leader, right? Like, you could read that one or two ways, face value. That's true. Or you could read it as, oh, don't worry about it, Element Lad. You'll be fine. But then it's like,
hoping that
it'll mess it up.
Yeah.
Or then even trying to sow doubt, right? Like, oh, it's not too bad. Oh, but then again, being leader, maybe it is bad. Blah, blah, blah.
But if he's trying to downplay it and it turns out to be a bad situation, does that mean that he's in on it? Obviously not. But you could really take that.
Yeah.
So is Polar Boy the Eddie Haskell of the Legion?
Yes. Again, I don't think it's like as nefarious and
right.
but that when he asked that last question, if I ran for lead, I mean, he's a newbie. He's the newbiest of the newbies practically, and he.
Well, yes and no.
Well, no, I mean, in what order did those 5 join? You know what I mean? Like, no, I guess Quizlet probably. No, Sensor Girl would have been the last of the 5.
I mean, yeah, he is part of that group. I agree with you, but he's been around a lot longer than most of the.
Sure, absolutely.
Than even a lot of the Legionnaires.
But that's like, it's almost like, what if Magnetic Kid was like, I'm going to run for. They would laugh him out of the headquarters. But it's Polar Boy who does have the experience, but he's still a newbie in terms of being a new member of the thing. So I thought this was not necessarily nefarious or evil, but slightly calculated. He is a politician because that's what he's doing. Yeah. He's glad-handing with Magnetic Kid and Tellus and shaking their hands and kissing babies.
Offering to help them. Yes. Yeah.
He has plans.
Playing to his constituency.
And I thought that was
That's a very good point.
Yeah, that's why I said earlier he has a journey. Like I feel like the bravado that he walked into that tryout session with, he is keeping that. And he's like, I may be the new guy, but I can do this job.
Okay.
I'm going to show you.
So, like I said, I don't know what happens in the Universal Project. I have no idea what how the story goes, and or how it ends up. So, does he get elected leader, and then the situation with Universo unfolds, or is that the last gasp of the Element Lad administration, and then Legion's like, yeah, let's get some new blood as far as the leadership goes?
I guess we're gonna find out.
Yeah. So then what happens when he becomes, because part of where I'm coming at with this is that down the road, I kind of know things don't turn out well under Polar Boy's administration because of the 5 year later run. So now I'm very intrigued because I didn't know that this whole leadership thing came in at this point because, like I said, I wasn't really reading the Legion. Although like I said, I did come in. I guess I must have forgotten a lot of this stuff when I came back to the Legion.
Yeah.
And in terms of Polar Boy's reign. So anyway.
Yeah. No, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun, I think. And, poor Element Lad suffers from having to be leader during a time where Levitz wants to push the envelope in terms of what stories he wants to tell. The Legion of Superheroes, Karate Kid dies on his watch. Legion of Superheroes, Legion of Supervillains, whatever stories were in the Tales book at the time. Then you have the whole Who is Sensor Girl mystery and the Crisis and a new Fatal Five forms. Universo practically pulls the rug out from under the entire Legion under his watch. Like, as good as a Legion leader, because he was kind of understated and calm and not sort of headstrong and fiery like Dream Girl or whatever else, or one of the other ones that maybe was all like rules. He's very thoughtful about his leadership to a default, and now it's sort of, I think in one of my notes of like holdover questions to constantly go back to, the Element Lad leadership is something we've been talking about, and it's just going to be unfortunate that it's not going to end well. Yeah.
It just occurred to me, he's kind of like the Eisenhower of the Legion, right? Just very coming out of World War II, guy gets elected. Normality is the watchword of the time going into the 50s, and just trying to maintain the status quo. All the while, underneath that, the Cold War is bubbling up. and the nuclear war race with Russia and all that. Yeah. So this is, I think this is very interesting politics going on here, very subtly. Well, except for maybe this scene. But this is an area of Legion stories we really don't get or haven't gotten. So
right.
This is, I'm very intrigued now. I want to see how this goes.
I think we could probably talk for like 3 more hours. Let's wrap up this issue. I think we hit a lot of the big points. You have a few smaller points?
Yeah, I just want to say just real quick, that scene, the club scene, just a couple things that we haven't already touched on. The fact that Brainiac 5 agrees to go out with Sunboy and Dawnstar. The fact that Dawnstar even goes too is just like, what?
The fact that Sunboy asks Dawnstar when Wildfire is not on planet.
Yes, exactly. Well, she went, but I love that scene on page 24, that panel of her dancing with the crazy psychedelic lights in the background, and just beautiful work by LaRocque and DiCarlo here. So I love I love LaRoque's love for Dawnstar.
Yeah. And it goes on to what we said, Brainy taking a chance, right?
Yeah.
He decides to take a chance to go out with Sunboy, even though he says I should never trust this guy outside of a mission or my lab, but he does. And it actually works in his favor because the doctor is out as well, So it's like, see, this is what happens when you take those leaps of faith, when you take those risks, Brainiac 5, and you leave your
comfort zone.
Yeah. Just small little things. Just the fact that LaRoque or Levitz, whoever it is, or the two of them, are showing Shrinking Violet and Lightning Lass making plans in the background, everything Levitz said, that I don't know what I'm doing, but he knows what he's doing. And if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it in small, subtle ways.
Yeah. And it's funny too, how Shrinking Violet normally is a character that we've seen since her transformation. She's a very vocal person, and she usually has some things to say about whatever situation or scene that she's in, but she's uncharacteristically quiet in this issue. She only really has that one bit of dialogue at near the very end. So it's a very minor thing, but I found that interesting.
Well, it's not about her, right?
Right. Yeah. It's that's not what this issue is about, but it's just, if you're seeing the through line of her character, she usually is a focal point, if not the center of attention in a lot of the scenes that she's in.
I think I'm done with my notes on this.
Yeah. I will add one more thing. This comes in at the very beginning. I should have mentioned it before when I mentioned Brainiac 5's 12th level intelligence. He at the scene with Colossal Boy and Timberwolf, their argument, and they're like, "Hey, the smartest guy in the Legion is right here. Let's ask him." Brainiac 5 mentions his 12th level. He says effector intelligence, and I thought, well, that's a peculiar word. I couldn't recall a time that I had seen Brainiac 5 and his computer brain, his super intelligence, being referred to as a 12th level effector intelligence. So I had to look that up. And so not a lot out there on Google for this, but I did find some references to the original Brainiac. And I think it's a story in Action Comics where they use that specific phrase to describe Brainiac's level of intelligence. And I've also found a reference more recently to the prose novel, The Flash Supergirl Sacrifice. So the part of the Arrowverse stories. And right. So the Brainiac 5 in that is also made reference to his 12th level effector intelligence.
I think the thing I like about that scene is that he could have been way harsher on them, but he wasn't. This is like a new Brainy for this issue, right? We've been saying it the whole time. He's not like, "Oh, you dummies, you wouldn't even begin to understand what my blah blah blah."
Right.
He's not. He's like, just matter of factly. He's just like, "Nope, this is what it is. That's it."
Yeah. That whole conversation kind of reminded me of, I don't know, it was almost kind of not a diss, a commentary on comic book fans.
Right.
We have all this knowledge about all these characters and the history and stuff, but maybe we don't know so much about sports ball or something. I don't know.
Okay, so I think we thoroughly analyzed. Like I said, I think we could have,
as we always do.
Yeah, but that issue, there was just a lot. There were small points, big points. I think we could have gone on, and just as you referenced, until we get to the Universo project, much like the Sensor mystery, we don't know how all of this plays out. Some of the questions might be answered. Some may be answered in small ways or in ways that are not as satisfying as we want. Other answers are probably going to be, much bigger and broader and better. But I have a new appreciation of these issues, whereas before I sort of thought of them as filler, and in many ways they are. They also are leading us to a definite point that we don't have to wait as long as we did with like Sensor Girl.
Yeah, I wonder if through the letter column, the letters that they were receiving during this entire run, if Paul changed his approach in some of these stories, such like the Sensor Girl thing, getting that feedback is like, well, it seemed like it just went on forever and ever, and so he's going to do maybe more compact storytelling because the Universal Project is a 4-part, a specifically named on the covers and just kind of we refer to it generally, but I think it actually says part 1 or part 2 or something like that.
Yeah. Chapter.
Yeah, chapter. There we go. So actually has a trade dress, so to speak. So yeah, that's very interesting. I'm be curious to see how that plays out as we go forward.
Thank the Judas Contract for that.
Oh, that good point. Mm-hmm. I forgot that was yeah.
I think that was, if not the first, one of the very first, certainly one of the major, because the Dark Phoenix saga was named after it was done. Mm-hmm. That was named in letter columns or conversations, or maybe it was a chapter title, but it was never a trade dress, as you mentioned. And we've had banners like Crisis. We've had tie-in banners. Secret Wars 2 had little corner triangles. But in terms of like naming a story within a title, Judas Contract really is the first one that comes to mind. Even Born, something like, and that was 84.
I was gonna say, yeah.
So Born Again was one of the titles in that storyline that then became the main title, But yeah, this one, this Universal Project, maybe the second one. I don't know. I'd have to deep dive and do that search. But then eventually it became the norm. And then suddenly everything got, 10 Nights of the KG Beast and Many Deaths of Batman and Panic in the Sky. And, although I don't think that might have had one, even like in Starman, the Will Payton Starman, there was Seduction of Will Payton or something like that. Like everything had to be, here's 4-issue stories. Here's a 4-issue story. Here's a 5-issue. Here's 6 issues. Here's, it just exploded.
And we weren't getting trades back then.
Not deeply. No.
Yeah. So yeah, this interesting. Yeah. That whole time period was just, it seems to be like they're moving towards that kind of approach to collecting certain storylines.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we could go on and on, list, the Titans hunt, but this, again, we're still at 86 and all that is like late 80s, 90s, Spider-Man assassination plot. And just, so it'd be very interesting to see. Now the indies might've done it already, and certainly miniseries had a certain trade dress and all that. But when it came to series, few and far between this early. So that would be a fun research project to figure out. So then we hit the back half of our episodes where we take a look at Legion of Superheroes throughout the DC Universe, starting with Who's Who number 23. We are covering also Legends, the event du jour of 1986. We're throwing in this week the start of History of the DC Universe. So these are all books that came out in October. So we're going to look at the first issue of History of the DC Universe in regards to the Legion. And then there is also a Legends tie-in, Firestorm issue number 55, that we will, get to when we get to, and we can have words about that issue. But that's it. Relatively small this week. Even though it sounds like a lot, believe me, it'll be small. But we start with Who's Who 23, taking a look at the Legion characters of Tellus. Once again, the Who's Who matching kind of, sort of, with the issue. Tharok, Timberwolf, and the Time Trapper. So let's start with Tellus. What did you learn? What did you think of this entry?
Well, this is I referenced this earlier, but this is where either discovered or rediscovered because I forgot that Tellus's real name is Ganglios, which goes to your point of the fact that Loros calls him by his apparent superhero name of Tellus. So, and this was drawn by Steve Lytle, which is appropriate because this was his creation, this character. As far as, so the other thing I was thinking about is, it talked about his powers, the power to read minds and communicate telepathically. In addition, he has telekinesis, basically, right? But in the issue 30, when we see him interacting with Loros, it is very clearly they are communicating telepathically. So that is a function of this species. So, but yet is Telos apparently has the ability to use or has telekinesis, right? So is that his quote unquote superpower? Is that he can move things with his mind as opposed to just communicate with his mind? I mean, it doesn't really matter in terms of his Legion membership because they wanted a telepath since Saturn Girl is not an active member at the moment. So I just thought it was interesting, though, that they actually say he has this ability as if it's a special thing, but his telepathy is not a special thing, or at least not in the way that we've seen so far.
Or just enough that it makes him different. I even wrote in my notes, could he be considered a mutant of his race?
Right, exactly. That's what I was thinking as well.
What do you make of his logo? Is that supposed to be like an undersea coral or something?
That's kind of how I took it.
Right? Yeah, because you can see the base is clearly the rock surface of the ocean, but then the stuff growing out of it, to form his name. It's interesting.
And it just goes to show, an artist like Steve Lytle he really has an understanding of not just what the character looks like, but what the character is, the whole of the character. This is just a nod to the fact that he comes from an underworld planet or underwater planet, a watery planet, right? So I love that level of engagement by the artists when it comes to these kinds of things.
Let's see, I wrote here, so they write his first appearance as Legion of Superheroes 304. He does not show up in that issue. That is my first Legion issue ever that I bought off the rack. It focuses on the Academy. And in it, there is a scene where Nightwind and Lamprey are talking about Wildfire. And Nightwind says about Wildfire, he's the only one I know worse off than our friend in the special wing over there.
Mm-hmm.
At least he had a choice to become a student here on a world that's almost impossible for that species. Wildfire didn't have a choice. So we never saw Tellus, but they're making that his first appearance, at least in terms of who's who, because of the strong reference. Now, there's that little creature that eats metal that's running around, and part of me was like, I hope that they didn't think that was like Tellus when he was a kid or something like that. That would be weird,
yeah.
But I thought that's an odd choice to list that as his first appearance.
I by all definitions of first appearances, they actually have to appear. So what is his first appearance? Did you have that in your notes?
That would be the issue. Wasn't it the one where Laurel Kent got shot? Remember, he shows up just randomly in a panel.
Panel, right?
Yeah. He's right there. By the way, I looked at my notes. We did get a mention of his name, Ganglios, in issue 12.
Okay.
It was a backup story. Remember the backup story where we saw people reacting to whatever was going on with the Legion, like something with
yes.
Yeah, and like all these people were reacting, and we got to the Academy, and Tellus is there, and Lamprey, Comic Queen. She says, we all want in Ganglios, but it's Magnetic Kid's brother that took off for the Starship.
Okay, yeah. So I am just stupid.
No, I mean, I had to look it up myself. I take detailed notes, so it's like I had it listed, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay,
See,
just as simple as a search.
unfortunately, the older I get, Peter, the more. So this information that we are talking about and regurgitating to the listeners, once we're done with that issue, I just kind of flush it out of my mind, so I can fill it up with the next issue.
Right. Hey, we've said this is not the podcast where we're gonna know, exactly what order they've joined and who was dating who back in Adventure. Like this is
that's what the internet's for.
Right. One thing I did question about his entry: how did Tellus learn about the Legion? I want to know, because they just mentioned his contact with humans was at a minimum. Ganglios learned of the existence of the Legion of Superheroes. I would love to know that story. That'd be
well, and it also points to or suggests something about the relationship with the Gildeshpan and the Hykranians, as in terms of what kind of dominion, I'll just say, that the Gildeshpan have with them. So obviously, some outside information gets in from the outside world, so to speak, because until the Gildeshpan showed up, as we talked about, I think the last issue, or was it the one before? When the Gildeshpan show up, they basically inform the Hykranians, oh yeah, there's a whole universe out there, and we're just one part of it. So yeah, I just what is that whole thing? How does that work between the two species and the fact that there's this larger universe now to this culture? So yeah, I'm very fascinated by the interspecies politics that Levitz is throwing in here.
I thought this was odd. He has no ability to survive in personal combat in a human environment. He's got those big hands. Can he, whack somebody with those? He's got a tail
too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that would be a fun little action scene if we saw something like that. How does and pardon my speciesism, how does a fish fight?
You ever see a fish smack somebody in the face with their tail?
I mean, how many times have we seen the comedic depiction of that in like a Looney Tunes cartoon?
Right. That hurts.
Wait, you sound like you have some personal experience with this.
All right. Tharok, as drawn by Mark Bright and Carl Kiesel, a character that I have no experience with in real time, only in back issues. Maybe in later volumes of the Legion, but according to the Who's Who, he was dead by the time I was reading Legion. So this whole thing with like the Dark Man, I know what they're talking about, but if I've read those issues, I don't remember, and I'm thinking I probably haven't read those issues, even though they're in my collection. Yeah,
I think I've maybe read one or two issues where, and I might be misremembering, maybe it was just a reference to the Dark Man, but I think I've read a few issues where the Dark Man appears. But I've not read the whole thing, and I don't know how many issues that spans. I have to imagine it's at least a few, if not several, until they wrap up that plot. But I had no idea. Actually, had no idea that. No, I did. I do recall some reference that the Dark Man was had some connection to Tharok. So, but I had mostly forgotten it when I read this entry.
Yeah. I mean, his origin is straight out of his first appearance, Adventure Comics 352. They kind of detail all of that. I didn't really get anything out of it, and other than seeing him in the cartoons, like when we did that episode on the animated movie with the Justice League and the Fatal Five and the Legion of Superheroes, because he was in that, and then random episode. I mean, I'm like, okay, yeah, Tharok. There he is. I didn't learn anything.
Well, he's got an interesting visual, especially for the time of being literally half man, half robot, split down the middle. So that, that's kind of neat. It does make me wonder. And then I all the years I've been reading Legion comics and seeing Therak show up here and there as I'm going through the history of the Legion. Um, uh, how are his clothes just half? His tunic and his trunks. How does he put on half of those things on his body? It's one of those little comic book conceits that you just accept and move on.
Yeah. Timberwolf, also by Steve Liedel, which I thought was an interesting choice. Obviously he's the one who designed the most recent costume that we're reading. So it did make me wonder, okay, who created? So he was created by Hamilton and Fort. I looked up how, Fort was still alive. He died from cancer when he was 47 in 1966. He was basically drawing shortly up until he could no longer draw. And considering how important both of those gentlemen are to the Legion in terms of how many characters they've created and concepts. I mean, we give a lot of nod to like Jim Shooter, etc., but we keep seeing their names. It makes me wonder how much longer of a career Fort would have had, and would he have given more to the Legion mythos and been part of more of it. So I guess if you're going to use a creator, Steve Liedel, great, that's fine. Maybe he's a fan of Timberwolf. I don't know.
Well, he seems to be a favorite of a lot of the people involved with the Legion, or maybe it's Levitz, because he's constantly in the background or something to do with him. He's always on the page,
right? Which
I find very interesting because his more recent portrayal, he's kind of a dummy. He doesn't seem to have a whole lot of. There's not a lot to him, I guess. He's a very simple guy.
Yeah.
Which is not how he was always portrayed. Even early on, because his origin is that he was convinced by, I forget now what the guy's name is. Yeah, Cartharn is an android, tricked Bryn into believing that Bryn was the android and that Karth was the human son of Bryn's father. And so there's all that, but then later as he takes on the more, I think it was the Cockram design, where he is a precursor to Wolverine almost, I think, in terms of his look.
By 10 years.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And he becomes this real introspective and loner type, which he used to be called Lone Wolf before he became Timberwolf. So the fact that, I don't know, I find his current personality and character to be a little different than how he's been portrayed for the last 20 years before this.
It was a nice change of pace.
It is, yeah. Different, sure.
Yeah.
I do, his powers. Why is this guy a Legionnaire? He's super strong. He's super fast. The only thing that's different about that is that he's apparently super acrobatic, which I don't know that that the artists or the writers of the book over the years have really played into that a little bit here and there, but nothing special. So what is it about Timberwolf? Basically, this is my central question. What is it about Timberwolf that makes him so popular with the various creators over the years?
It's because he can do that whole face thing.
Well, but that's a more recent thing.
I don't know. I think it's like you sort of get off. Maybe it has to do with like the powers that don't really show up. Like, can he smell? Does he have good smell? He's sort of like the vixen of the group, right? Which is enough to make it different. Are there any other animal characters within the DC universe? Maybe that's why we got, what was her name in the 0 Hour? Cat's Paw or Cat's Eye, or that female Legionnaire member. Yeah, you might not have read her. I don't know. He's not necessarily one of my favorites. It's not that I don't dislike him, but
right.
Yeah.
Although I like I said, given his more recent character shift he's not. He's become a less favorite Legionnaire in my mind. So I will mention, though, the one thing I thought was curious in this entry, that last paragraph, Timberwolf and Lightlass broke off their relationship after many years of mutual support. It makes it sound like that they both agreed to end their relationship, and that's not how I read the situation.
Are we going to get back into that argument again?
All right.
Remember, she asked him to leave.
Yep.
How would you put it?
She asked him. He said no, but that doesn't mean they're on a break. Right? So she ended it at that point because of that. He was very passive in that. He made the choice not to go with her, but he didn't say, okay, well, I guess we're done. She did that.
Big dummy. He should have went with her.
That was a much better situation or result for Lightning Lass by that situation. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah. The background work is a little muddy. It didn't print as well, I think, as some of the other ones. But I loved that their relationship, Timberwolf and Lightlass, that is their relationship, or was. Just like with Starboy, and we had Starboy and Dreamgirl back to back, so it was a much different kind of ending to their relationship. This one is, I love that. I love that the way those two entries kind of match. And then he once infiltrated the Legion of Supervillains, which is how he got to be a member. It would have been nice in Eye for an Eye if maybe that would have been referenced. When I learned that, I was like, oh, he has, like, that would have been cool. Like if he would have been like, oh man, they're back again. I could have done something. And this is how I got my place in the Legion. So I need to step up,
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been a very cool addition to the storyline. Yeah.
Yeah. So then we come to the Time Trapper, Keith Giffen, Rick A. Bryant. Boy, what do I need to say about the Time Trapper that I haven't already?
He's 6'10".
Love that.
I don't know that the artists over the years have sufficiently shown his height in the various scenes. So I was very surprised by that. 6'10". That's
cool.
Wow. Does that include the hood or?
Probably. Maybe he's wearing, stilts. They list Adventure Comics 314 as his first appearance. That is not the first appearance. It is 317. 314 is a story about the character Alactor going back in time and getting Hitler and some other baddies from the 20th century, bringing them to the future and then putting their minds in like robots or Superboy or Mon-El and something like that. So I was like, are they trying to say that Alactor is Time Trapper because he used a bubble? Like, that's weird.
Yeah, I thought we talked about this before when discussing Time Trapper, where it's just suddenly there was the Iron Curtain of Time, and we would see him, and sometimes his agents. But that doesn't make any sense in terms of what came after that particular issue.
When I skimmed 314, none of that seemed to be in play. 317 is the first one where you get like the Iron. They just sort of mention it. He's not even in the book. I think maybe a tiny cameo, but they just mention, the Iron Curtain. Superboy is off fighting the Iron Curtain of Time. They're trying to break the barrier, right? So yeah, that was weird. I mean, I think it could kind of be cool if you want to retcon this guy who went through time, went backwards in time, and maybe because of that found a way to go forwards in time. Like if of any other Legion characters, if you wanted to create a prototype human being for the Time Trapper, that I could live with that. That's fine. But the Who's Who has made other mistakes, so I'm assuming this is a mistake.
To kind of go along with what you said before about the relationship, the way it's shown and with the characters, we get the background panel there, or background image there of presumably that's Lightning Lad from the Legionnaires 3 miniseries that we've talked about. and there is a paragraph in the history area for him, specifically referencing that, trying to destroy the mind of Lightning Lad, but failed. So they're keeping things somewhat current with what's actually going on in the printed comics at this time. You know, this is what, a few months later in this Who's Who, but it's still very much in the writer's mind as far as this history goes.
Surprised they didn't make reference for Cosmic Boy, although I don't know if by issue, what issue are we up to with Cosmic Boy now? Issue 2? I don't know.
2?
Maybe they haven't. Maybe he hasn't shown up in that, but I would think they would want it because they're usually good about promoting in Who's Who. Like, go and look at this character here, and go and look at this character here. So they say that he is a peer of Darkseid. That's high praise.
Who was it when we talked about Legionnaires 3? He was playing a game with somebody. That wasn't Darkseid, though, was it?
Oh, you're right. Was it Darkseid? Was it Phantom Stranger? Was it, who was it? I forgot about that.
It was a villain.
It was Brainiac.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I thought maybe it was Darkseid because of this mention. Okay, so a peer by Darkseid. When have we ever encountered Darkseid talking about? Because the only interaction that I recall between the two characters is Darkseid stealing what we thought at the time was the real Time Trapper, and I think that was the reveal in the Great Darkness Saga, where, as they mentioned here, was actually a controller under Time Trapper's sway, or I don't know.
Maybe that's what they mean. You know, maybe that's why Darkseid went after him, because he considered him powerful enough to maybe thwart Darkseid's plan. So, because it says considered by appear by Darkseid. So,
I mean, that's pretty high praise, considering how Darkseid has been depicted over the years. Plus, his own egomania. If he considers someone a peer, that is high praise indeed.
I have a couple things about the letter column. Did you see inside cover? Joe Newbaum says, "Who in the world is Kid Psycho? He doesn't have his own entry, and he was seen in Crisis 3. It would have helped to identify which Legionnaires have died." And they respond, "Kid Psycho was a little-seen reservist member of the Legion. He died in Crisis 3 and was left out of Who's Who for a variety of production reasons. The Kid Psycho entry will finally turn up in our forthcoming Who's Who in the Legion. That will be a 6-volume set debuting sometime in 1987. It actually winds up being 7 issues.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. And there were 2 letter items that asked not only about letter writers who asked about Kid Psycho, but also why Sensor Girl and not Projectra. So
right.
Very interesting that they all were hitting on the same thing. So
who knew Kid Psycho had some fans? Or, and impressed upon them, and his appearance in Crisis impressed upon them enough to want to know more about that very minor character.
Legends. So we were supposed to look at Legends number 3 to give us to see where the Legion played out in Legends number 3, and then there was a tie-in this month as well, Firestorm 55. Which prominently had Cosmic Boy on the cover, including his little rough of his little title logo. By the time I walked away after reading Legends 3 and skimming Firestorm, there's nothing to talk about.
No.
There's absolutely no Legion connection in Legends.
Not directly.
Not directly.
I'm going to make a connection for you.
Oh, okay. We'll start there then. Make a connection. What do you got?
During much of Legends number 3, which is really a lot of recap of what's going on in the larger DCU.
So bad.
Oh boy. I don't know why I thought Legends was good back then.
Because it's drawn well.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I did like Byrne's work in that. But anyway, Darkseid talks a lot in this issue about his plan. and how it's progressing, and just like Universo does in this issue of the Legion. And tenuous, perhaps. Brimstone is analogous to, say, like the lightning monsters in this issue. I know I'm stretching, but I was trying to find something.
Yeah, it's true. So it's a weirdly constructed issue because if you remember the Crisis issue number 10, I think it is, where along the bottom of all the pages, they ran something called the Monitor tapes, which Harbinger was trying to give. It's almost a precursor to History of the DC Universe. She was trying to give an overview of how the Crisis is affecting the larger DC Universe that they just couldn't get in story. And it was a way to touch on some tie-ins without making them so blatant, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what this issue does of Legends. You can read every page fully, and that's one story, or you can read just the bottom or just the top, and those are stories. But there are a couple of times where what's going on in the bottom is reflecting what's happening above. I think from a writer standpoint, it's creative. I do like it. However, as you mentioned, about 5-6 pages in, the bottom just becomes a total recap of the 2 issues before.
Yeah.
This is an event comic. You do not need a recap. People are reading it, and if they're reading it for the first time, it's only issue 3. They can pick up issues 1 and 2. They were all over the place. So about, like I said, 4, 5, 6 pages in, I was like, this is terrible. And even the main story nothing's really going. It's really Suicide Squad issue 0 is what it is.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, the story, some of the story beats about Suicide Squad going after Brimstone and meeting the other characters, I was like, wow, this is basically the germ of the Suicide Squad movie. It really is. Even Enchantress, she kind of almost goes crazy by the end. But like I said, it's drawn well. It has the worst cliffhanger. Oh no, Darkseid's going to unleash the Warhounds. What? I remember back when I was reading this as a kid, me and my friends, we were like, what? The what? The who? What now? So not a good issue.
Yeah.
It's not a good issue. And no Legion connection other than what you pointed out. Sort of.
Yeah, I scoured this issue for even the most minute instance of Cosmic Boy, or even a mention.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So we get it in the Firestorm. On the cover, if Cosmic Boy couldn't handle and he's laying there, and he's in 1 or 2 panels. But then it's really a story about Firestorm going up against Brimstone. That's it. That's all it is.
I counted 1 panel that he appeared in, and he's referred to by, I think, Firestorm as Cosmo Boy.
Firestorm has no history with them. He's not going to know.
Yeah, of course. But I did find it interesting, though, later in the issue, Firestorm uses magnetism to briefly trap Brimstone. So I guess a cool connection, but why not just have Cosmic Boy show up and try to help him?
I mean,
and then get blown away or something, or I don't know.
Right. Because in Legends 1, when Cosmic Boy couldn't handle Brimstone, the Justice League showed up, Firestorm was there. It writes itself. Now you go and do a spinoff, a tie-in, right? So not a good issue. I didn't read it, but just not a good tie-in. I would be really upset. If I was a major Legion, like I am now, it's oh yay, Legion connection. What? That's it? That's terrible.
So I wonder if the DC writers and artists were told sort of and you correct me if I'm wrong in this, being the Crisis file that you are, when Crisis on Infinite Earths was going on, they wanted people to bring that in, and in some cases they did a really good job of integrating their particular book into the whole Crisis stuff at the time. Or it was barely mentioned, or it was a red skies background image, and that's it, right? So, varying degrees of involvement within or in the books to the crisis. I wonder if Legends was supposed to be the same thing, and in other words, the creators of the various titles could do what they wanted to somehow connect to the legends, but it wasn't overt, and it didn't have to be overt, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Although the Firestorm issue is, I mean, they do really touch on the whole the Godfrey stuff.
Brimstone, obviously.
Yeah, obviously Brimstone, but something about there's some book burning relating to in Firestorm, and Godfrey is kind of like the one manipulating things, from the screen, so to speak. So
right.
there is some connection there, but like you said, I mean, the tie-in ties it, or writes itself based on what happened in Legends. So,
and it's written by John Ostrander, who is writing Legends.
Oh, that's right.
And Ostrander eventually would take over Firestorm.
He's listed as guest writer. I had not realized that until you just said that. Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's kind of
he had a good run on Firestorm. I actually liked his books. Very, very political, to talk about that again, brought in Russian counterparts and
I do remember a bit about that. I didn't read a lot of those issues, but yeah,
that was something I've always wanted to look at again, was the sort of infiltration of Russian agents throughout the larger DC universe once we got to Legends, and once we got to 1986 and a little bit in 1985. But Flash had it with some of the Blue Trinity characters.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Rocket Red Brigade and Green Lantern and Justice League, and there was a Wolf character in Firestorm, and his cat. They tried to make a Firestorm over in Russia. The People's Heroes in The Outsider. I mean, it was evident. Like, you knew you were reading an 80s comic because here came a Russian character.
Yeah, that whole I remember reading a lot of those books back then, and just living among the idea of nuclear annihilation because of our the adversarial nature between America and the Soviet Union at that time is just overpowering, and then it spills into my comics like, I don't need this, I'm living it.
Yeah.
But it was fun.
Okay. So we can put Legends aside then and see what happens. I mean, clearly we have to wait until, obviously, the Cosmic Boy miniseries to really get anything. But we'll keep watch. We'll keep watching and see. Leading us to our final issue, History of the DC Universe, #1. To take a look to see if there's anything in this that connects to the Legion of Superheroes. Marv Wolfman, George Perez, Carl Kiesel on inks, Tom Zucco colorist, Mike Gold editor, who is editing Legends, I think. This is basically their response to the crisis to try to create a linear story, a linear narrative to the larger DC universe from the beginning of time to the end of time. And it's split it into only 2 chapters, prestige format. And they were originally going to include History of the DC Universe at the end of Crisis. The last 2 issues of Crisis were supposed to be this story, maybe not told in this manner. In fact, the Crisis itself was once called, the History of the DC Universe, or had some connection or something like that. Yeah. But they decided to spin it off, and we got what we got. So we're going to take a look at issue 1, because that's the issue that came out this month, for any Legion connections. Do you want to hit us with your thoughts about this issue or anything in particular?
It was very nice to examine this after decades of this book sitting in my collection. So that was a very nice side benefit of you wanting to take a look at this, because
me,
it's this
side benefit of me giving homework.
Yeah, because the George Perez art in here is just exquisite, and he's doing some things on here in terms of design. Oh, and I guess the color work too is just beautiful. But yeah, just so gorgeous to see again after so many years. So, but my my Legion, I guess, connections to this are very kind of tenuous, because they're not directly related to the Legion. They're just connections because of, for example, there's some talk in here about the controllers, the origin of the controllers, and obviously there are connections to the Legion, to the controllers, from the controllers to the Legion. So there's that. Gemworld is mentioned in here. There's a connection to the Legion there. Extremely tenuous is Jonah Hex. Jonah Hex is mentioned in here, and we've talked about his appearance when he gets thrown into the far future, and there's that crossover between the Jonah Hex title and the Legion book that we've already talked about. So, like I said, my thoughts on, or my connections there to the Legion are very, very slight. So, but I know you have some other things.
Yeah. By the way, I mentioned Crisis was once called I meant DC. It was originally called DC Universe Crisis on Infinite Earths with a logo and everything. So that's the connection I was making between those two titles. So I also pointed out I also listed the controllers. Not that they connected to the Legion, but we do, because we even in this episode we've talked about them.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So on page 14 and 15, I think, somewhere around there, there's a double page spread where we learn about the origins of the Greek Olympian gods, the gods of Olympus. It talks about the Titans and Zeus, and a lot of this backstory is New Teen Titans related. That's really where this version of the gods exists. Because remember, Perez's Wonder Woman has not come out yet. So we don't know what the new version of DC's Olympian gods are going to be like or look like.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole origin of, the gods springing from chaos and Gaia and Uranus and etc., and creating the Titans, and then the Titans give birth to Zeus, etc., blah, 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 blah. That's all fundamentally New Teen Titans, maybe a little bit pre-Crisis Wonder Woman, but at this point, it's New Teen Titans. Then there's the next page that talks about the new gods, right? We get a Kirby's new gods in there. We go a couple pages until we get to the time of where Greece rose to power, and we start to learn about the origins of the Amazons. And at the top of the page of that double page spread, we see some Amazons squaring off against Heracles. That's very important, not Hercules, because that's Roman. Heracles, where he drugged. Now they have Hippolyte with an E, which that is something instead of Hippolyta, because Perez's Wonder Woman did use the E form of the name. Talking about her girdle, and then she escaped Heracles' army, and then her and her sister Antiope, managed to free themselves, and then they would go off and find a new island. Now, here in the history, they call it Paradise Island. In the middle of the Bermuda Triangle, Perez would call it Themyscira. That's when Themyscira's name would really come into play with Perez. He didn't invent it, but Paradise Island was Paradise Island pre-Crisis. So then, in the end of this, it says it is said that the gods, led by Zeus himself, came to Earth and lay waste to our world. A great war was played out on the battlefield before it was learned that these were not the gods, but ravagers from another world. The gods returned to Earth many times, but eventually forsook our planet for the grandeur of Olympus. Still, there were tales of the gods' return. Now, I don't know what the previous thing is referencing about laying waste to our world. I'm not sure what that is, but the very bottom of the page where you see Olympus with that very cylinder-like building, and you see Zeus, red hair with the little tiara on his head or whatever that thing is called, and next to him is that ravaged world. That is a reference to Legion of Superheroes Annual number 2 from 1983. Is that what I said? Yes, the wedding of Karate Kid and Projectra. Because if you look at the design of Olympus in History of the DC Universe, and then you go look at the annual, it is the same design. That cylinder shape, those little pipe, it looks like factory more than anything. It looks like a little factory down below. And the design of Zeus is the same as well, as drawn by Dave Givens in that annual. And we found out in that issue that they were not gods. They were Durlans who had escaped the 6-minute war from Durla. And they had come to Earth, and they were masquerading as gods for some reason, you know. So the history of the DC Universe is also suffering a tiny bit of being in limbo between Crisis and whatever happens once the Trinity finally become the post-Crisis Trinity, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, as detailed by Byrne, Perez, and Frank Miller, etc. So they're referencing quite a lot of other gods, quote-unquote gods, but I thought that was a very interesting, and it's something I only realized now as I was researching this issue. I didn't get that as a kid, even if I read that annual.
Well, I didn't get it now. So when you told me about that before we started recording, I'm like, oh wow, I would never ever have connected those things.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. I would love to know what the previous one means too, unless that is part of the annual story that I'm just not remembering. You know?
Yeah.
But they very clearly say the gods returned to Earth many times. You know, and then they say still there were tales of the gods' return. So it's like I kind of feel like maybe they're referencing more than one story, but that's the only one I can reference. So a semi-major Legion reference and to a semi-major Legion annual, and
very subtle,
so incredibly subtle. Why they chose to fixate on that is beyond me.
Yeah, but I love it because this is just clearly demonstrating Wolfman's love of the DC universe, and just I mean, come on, not even a direct reference. It's just very, like I said, subtle, the most subtle of references, and yet here it is in one of the most important books of this time period from DC Comics. It's just that's beautiful. It's brilliant.
And you have to look at the artwork to really understand it. Now, some of this might be holdover information from Peter Sanderson's research that gentleman did prior to the crisis, where he read every DC comic, so he's like taking a look at how do you do that pre-computer, like pre-major computer.
What a great job, though.
Oh, I would love it. It's what every podcaster is trying to do since,
That's true. Very true.
Yeah. So there you go. There's your Legion, your semi-major Legion connection before we get to issue number 2. Fascinating. See what you learn, kids? And we should make mention, because it will come into play with the Legion later. October is also the month that gave us Superman number 1, Adventures of Superman 424, and Action Comics 584, featuring New Teen Titans. Basically, the new revamp, the new Superman is finally in the DC universe,
right?
And we'll have to keep watch on some of those issues, because eventually we'll have a Legion crossover. So, whew, turned out to be a meaty episode.
Aren't they all?
It just surprises me. Any final thoughts on anything?
No, I think I think we've done this issue well.
Yeah. end this episode. And
I hope anyway. I guess that's up to the listeners, not really me.
Somebody's downloading these episodes. It's not just me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So don't forget about the contest, peter@thedailyrios.com, or send an email to Eric at
longboxreview@gmail.com.
Right, I knew that. Submit for the contest, but let us know how we're doing. We always like to hear from people, especially if you're reading along. If you're getting ready to read along, for the Universo project, if you were there reading some of this stuff going on here in 1986, at the end of 1986, we will continue to look at other stories as they come into play. We're almost going to be done with the Who's Who, which is kind of cool. We have to figure out what we're going to do with the Legion Who's Who, because we can't go through every character, because we'll go crazy. So,
all right, yeah, that's a good point.
We'll figure that out. Yeah, I think that's it. Any final thoughts?
No.
Enjoy your summer, people. This is probably two episodes in July you might be getting, maybe, or however the schedule works out. So that's cool. We're churning along, giving them that Legion talk.
Well, and part of that is because I will be going on vacation during the summer, a couple times, once here soon, and then once a little bit later in the summer. So
nice.
Got to get these banked in, so we continue our march towards our podcast anniversary, our podcast anniversary.
Yay!
So.
Cool. All right. As always, long live the Legion Project Podcast. See you, Eric.
Bye, Peter.